Welcome to a life of possibilities and inspiring conversations. My name is Nkandu Beltz, and our guest today is Jack Delosa. Jack is a self-made millionaire, and he is the founder of the Entourage. Welcome to the show, Jack.
Thanks for having me, Nkandu. Really good to be here.
Welcome. So, Jack, how did the story start? How did you start the Entourage?
Yeah, well, I think I was very, very young when I decided that I wanted education to really comprise my life's work. My parents ran a not-for-profit organisation called Breaking the Cycle when I was very, very young, sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And they'd take long-term unemployed youth off the street. They'd put them through programs both in a workshop environment and out in the wilderness and, experiential learning. And then they'd place them into employment, and they'd purposefully take the most at-risk youth, right? Young adults, people that were on and off drugs or in and out of jail or from abusive homes, and they'd ultimately place them into employment. They were the best at what they did in Australia. When the government restructured the way they issued capital out to not-for-profits, Breaking the Cycle was unsuccessful under the new regime. So that organisation ultimately collapsed. So I think at a very young age and quite a developmental age, I was shown that education can transform even the most challenged of lives and people from the most challenged of backgrounds. And it needs to be underpinned by commercial nous if you want to do it in a sustainable and a substantial way. And so, that was always my dream. And so once I felt like I built the foundation in business from a credibility standpoint and a reputational standpoint and a financial standpoint and a network standpoint, I always wanted to return to building an education institution, starting with entrepreneurs and innovators, people who pioneer and push things forward. So in 2010 we launched the Entourage, and today it's Australia's largest education institution for entrepreneurs.
So for anybody who's wanting to start a business, because you said you had that experience, did you work for somebody before you started your own foundation? How did you do that?
It's funny, I was actually talking to one of my staff today about this. I've never worked for anybody else, which is really quite limiting, because all I've ever known is what goes on inside of my businesses, which means I don't have a very holistic view of the world, perhaps. But no, my experience, I suppose I dropped out of university in 2004, started my own business, and my education was failure, because back when I started in business, wow, it's 13 years ago now, there wasn't an entourage, and there wasn't, entrepreneurship wasn't trendy, and there was a lot less education available, there was a lot less networks available, a lot less capital available, and so there wasn't really a path that one could take, hence why I've more recently started the Entourage. But really my education came through trial and error.
So, and we have, for example, students are starting to prepare for their exams at the moment, and not everybody's going to get straight A's. What advice would you give to the ones that, probably are not interested in the university education?
The traditional education system is completely unsatisfactory in terms of developing human beings and even developing good learners, right? The very fundamental premise upon which it's built, it's not meeting. Once upon a time it did, right? In the 1800s, when it was about putting people into factories to fulfill essentially similar functions, whether they're growing up in Brisbane or Melbourne or whether they're growing up in New York or LA, you want them all to have the same skills so they can fulfill the same function. It worked beautifully for that. It's just that the world moved on. And is today moving on at a faster rate than ever before. So even exams is a good example, because you can look at, if an individual goes into an exam, you're not allowed to talk to the person next to you, you're not allowed to pick up your phone, you're not allowed to jump on the internet, you're not allowed to be resourceful, right? If you were to ask me what's the number one thing I look for in people that I'm employing within my organisation today, it's resourcefulness.
Exactly.
And so I take a bit of a challenge with traditional exams, because it puts people into a simulation which is completely counterproductive to the very capabilities that they're going to need to demonstrate when they step out into the real world. So if you're not good at high school or college exams, it probably just means you're going to do something really meaningful with your life.
Yeah, so it's not the end of the world if people don't get the, students don't get the straight A's.
No, it's not the end of the world. For me, it's more than that. It's indicative of somebody who's probably an experiential learner, somebody who probably likes to think outside the box, and somebody who probably thrives in an environment that isn't high school. And that's really good, because the world is an environment that is the opposite to high school.
And you've been running your business for a number of years now, and as you're saying, it's one of the best so far and in the country, and I think it will continue to be the best because I've been in your programs and they're just wonderful. So what would you say to upcoming entrepreneurs or people that are interested in entrepreneurship and some of the challenges that they might face in running their own businesses?
Yeah, well, I think that I don't carry the view that everybody should be an entrepreneur. My sort of overarching message, if you like, is figure out who you are. Try and develop a level of self-awareness, then build a life and a career or a business that aligns to that, right? And so whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're somebody that's building a meaningful career, or whether you're a painter, or whether you want to be a great father or a great mother, for me it's about really identifying what kind of life do I want to create, and then whether that fits into a traditional mould and a traditional path or not. Pursue it unapologetically. In terms of entrepreneurship, for those that do want to go out and start their own business, the biggest challenge is always a personal one, I believe. It's the emotional fortitude required to live in what can sometimes resemble absolute uncertainty, right? As an entrepreneur or somebody pursuing a meaningful career, or anybody that's challenging themselves in any field of life, we're always outside our comfort zone, right? By definition, we're trying new things. If it's a new thing, it's not an existing thing, and therefore it's probably something that you're uncomfortable with. And so it's about, for anybody pursuing a dream, in my view, it's about being comfortable in being uncomfortable, and recognizing that particularly when everybody has a challenging life, right? But particularly when you pursue a non-traditional path, whatever that is, the degree of challenge will most likely be even higher, right? And so it's just about recognizing that that's inevitable, anticipate that, be okay with that, and continue to build your life and your career or whatever it is in accordance with what you want.
And now I'd like us to touch base on the Entourage Fund. So how does that work? Is it only for young people, or it's for everyone?
Yeah, so the Entourage Growth Fund is something that we set up to invest in essentially Australian upstarts. So if you look at the Australian investment ecosystem, there's a lot of capital and attention around tech seed stage businesses and tech startups and tech upstarts. The Entourage Growth Fund is really an investment fund that we've set up to invest into high growth businesses, regardless of what space they may be in. Now, obviously, we look for scalability, but predominantly we're looking for great people who are values aligned and who are doing something truly innovative within their industry. So it's just about enabling the entrepreneurial ecosystem to become more fertile in a way that isn't just exclusive to tech.
Let's go into your book, Unprofessional. In there, you talked about talent being overrated. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, I think I was expressing my hope. Talent is overrated. Yes. So a gentleman called Jeff Colvin, who was a writer for the New York Times for many, many years, wrote a book called Talent is Overrated. And what Jeff Colvin did is he looked at the greats of history, people that we would consider to be great, be that individual a Picasso or a Tiger Woods or a Jack Welch who was the CEO of General Electric for about 20 years, Michael Jordan, Oprah Winfrey, right, J.K. Rowling. He'd look at all of these different examples and he asked the question, how much of a part did natural talent play in enabling that person to achieve their level of success? Because the old research suggests that you're born with predetermined boundaries, and the best thing to do is work out what your boundaries are so that you can stay inside of them. Is it, you know, the old
So in a
side.
way, we're sort of like trying to keep everyone inside the boxes.
Yeah, it's just a very limited view of human potential, right? Like you were born with a predestined capability in certain fields, and you can't move beyond that, right? So it's quite old school today, thankfully. And what Jeff Colvin was pointing to in his book was that the new research indicates that talent does exist. You give somebody a golf club, they'll hit the golf ball better than somebody else with it. So a natural talent, a natural aptitude in a particular field does exist. However, in achieving success, and particularly high levels of sustained success, the science shows that talent is irrelevant.
We'll take a short break and we'll be right back.